It's my pleasure to be able to share with you about the Reset. Reset is an associational revitalization strategy. We pioneered it down there in Noonday, working with Daryl and Kim and the rest of the staff there. We took the principles of church revitalization and put it in, applied it to the associations. And we've now led 9 associations through it, counting the current 3 that we have. Now, Reset is a consultant-led process, and that is based on biblical principles. And Reset, we have found, works in very large associations such as Noonday, as well as the smallest association we've done it in. So we've done it in associations from 19 churches all the way up to 120 some odd churches. Because it's biblical, it works in any situation. Now, what we seek to do with it is really 5 things. First off is help to define the purpose of the association. Coming out of COVID, many of our associations were struggling prior to the COVID, and it's really has extenuated how much many of our associations need to be revitalized. And part of that is to define what's the purpose. What is the purpose for each individual association? Secondly, it defines not only the purpose of it, but it's to discover the biblical principles upon which that association should be. Your purpose and principles are tied closely together. And so it's those unshakable principles that drives each individual association. Third, we want you to help to declare the priorities. What are the 3 or 4 priorities that an association must be prioritized in order to accomplish its purpose? And out of that, we want to develop what does it really mean to partnership. Back in the day, partnership or participation, I meant to say, what does it mean to participate? So it was basically if the pastor came to the weekly or bi-weekly pastor's conference. Today, participation can mean any number of things, but what does it mean to this individual association? And once we gather those 4 things of the purpose, the priorities, the principles, and the participation, we help to define a plan that will help each association to accomplish those 4 things. So what it's based upon is 3 realities. One is to help the association to become relational. Now, historically, what that looked at is the associational missional strategist being relational to the pastors. Well, it's gone much beyond that. We have to help the pastors to become relational to each other. And cohorts are a key to that. I just finished up here a few minutes ago. A cohort had 5 pastors that just was very exciting to see when they're in that relational environment, talking about where they're at, what needs to be happening in their church. So it's relational in that it's pastor to pastor. And then after that, we look at it, is the association really resourceful? In our structure within the Baptists, we have our national organizations and our state level organizations, and they are good and were very helpful in the days gone by. But today, we need that hands-on, personal, that only the AMS can provide unto each local pastor. So we help that pastor to become resourceful to it, and that's what Reset does, which then allows that association to become relevant. So that's a high view of it, and I'll be glad to take any questions you may have to answer specifically. I can speak a lot about what it does, but I'd rather to just answer your questions and see how we may be able to help you. Any questions that you have on it?
How does it work with very high turnover and very short pastorates?
Okay, very good question. In there, by coming forth and helping the association to define its purpose and focus on the priorities that it has, it then becomes flexible regardless of what the level of turnover to the individual association. By having to allow the association, primarily the AMS, along with those key long-term essential pastors, knowing the purpose, focusing on the principles and the priorities, allows, even when there's change in there, to continue on consistently in it. Because this will be based upon a clear understanding of those priorities and principles and purpose, really doesn't matter how often you change the local pastor. Did I answer your question for you?
Gets me started anyway. I'm thinking through some stuff.
What would be your follow-up question?
Well, I've been here 20 plus years, and so I'm very reliant on student-led churches, if you will. That's changing a little bit now, more toward bivocationals. But honestly, the working with pastors only does not work since they change so quickly.
Well, because this is an associational wide, we not only work with pastors, but when we help form the leadership team that the consultant will work through, then we also invite the key lay leaders from each individual church and from the other. We, working with that AMS, you put the key people that you know need to be on the leadership team, and we'll be reaching out and developing this. So if in your association, the key is not the pastors, the lay folks, we will work with those, and it will work just the same exact way.
Okay, I think. And one more thing, the process itself, how long does it take?
It generally takes 3 to 5 months when we begin working with the AMS, going to the training of your leadership team, and then meeting with the pastors and the key lay leaders. We're looking at 3 to 5 months.
I'll be calling you probably.
Thank you, sir. Be honored to help you.
Joe, I put this in the chat, but how do we connect with you if we want to talk?
Do what now?
How do we connect with you if we want to talk with you some more?
Okay, 2 ways. Let me give you my cell phone number. It's area code 803-215-3841. Once again, it's area code 803-215-3841. The second way is to come through my email address, which is Youngblood, all lowercase, at mtm123.org. Youngblood at mtm123.org.
Thank you.
Okay. And we're glad to help you. And this is a partnership to what we do. People generally ask me a lot of what the cost. We're in partnership with Move the Mountain Ministries, also with Noonday, and Move the Mountain subsidizes this as well. So the cost of it is very affordable to any association. The cost really depends whether you want to do it online, virtual, using Zoom, or whether you want the consultant to be in person with you, working through with you in an in-person type situation. So it is subsidized to be able to make it affordable to any association anywhere to be able to assist you. It's a joint partnership between the Noonday Network and Move the Mountain Ministries.
Joe, what have you seen be the most successful thing to get pastors relating to pastors?
We have found, just as like what I did today, is the cohorts, and the cohorts being small groups. It could be anywhere from 3, no more than 10. I do not like to see the number of 10. Ideal is 5 to 7, but it has to be well organized and has to have excellent content, but allowing them to be able to be personal, relational, discipleship based around the biblical principles that's in need. Like today, we began with these pastors here. It was the first session. We're doing a thing I call refocus, which is a new way for a new day. How do we actually help a church make the transitions coming out of COVID? COVID has forced tremendous changes on our churches, and most of our churches aren't prepared for those changes. So today we had a cohort based off of biblical principles, allowing each man to have ample time to ask questions, the thing. I really serve as a guided facilitator on it. So we have found, as we've worked with AMSs across the Southeast, that the cohort approach is the best approach in developing that relationship to pastors.
Joe, I just put it in the chat feature, is that you work with Move That Mountain, and they are a sponsor of NOBA. And if they'll go to the portal, they can see that information on there and get some information about that as well. Maybe contact you through that.
Okay. Also, you can get me through Noonday, because this is a partnership between the Noonday Network and the Move the Mountain Ministries. Okay, next question.
Somebody asked, how does this work for an association as it looks for a new director of missions? Have you worked with that during that interim time?
Yes, we have. We have worked, of the 9 associations we worked through, 4 of them have been in that period of time of looking for a new AMS. It works very, very well there. It helps to prepare the search team for exactly what's the type of man we're looking for, what needs to be a skill set. Yeah. Once you have determined those principles and those priorities that need to focus on, then you can focus your search for a man that fits within those principles and priorities. So an ideal situation would be an association that is looking for a new leader. Currently, of the 3 that I'm doing it for, one, the AMS just retired at the end of this year. The other one retired last year, but both of those are looking for a man, and the search team is part of the integral leadership team leading through it. Okay, someone else has a question.
Tell us a little bit more about Reset.
Okay, as I said, Reset is a consultant-led process. It's normally 3 to 5 months in length. We first off work directly with the AMS, and then we ask the AMS to form a leadership team. It's made up of both pastors and the key lay leaders. We basically ask the AMS to form it around 3 key figures. First off, who are the key influencers of the association? If the association is going to make change, who are the people that need to be on it? Those, you want to get those folks on your leadership team. Secondly, who are your innovators? Who are the forward-thinking people? People that when you talk with them, they don't talk about what used to be or what is. They're always thinking, what can the future be? What will a future look like? You want to get those innovators, and then you got to get your implementers on it. Those are the people that can help you to implement whatever comes out. And then from there, we want to do it in small cohort meetings. We can do as many as 10, but the ideal is 5 to 7 pastors at a time and key lay leaders. We do it in 3 levels. The first is we use an assessment. It's an assessment that was developed here in South Carolina that we assessed all of our associations in. Then from there, we've developed it where it's applicable across the nation. That assessment looks at these 4 priorities, that being what is the purpose of the association. Secondly, what are the key priorities that need to focus on? What are the biblical principles upon which it's driven? And then what determines participation? From that, from the cohorts and the information that's received from that, We then work with the AMS and the leadership team to bring back to the association a finalized recommendation to be adopted, sometimes in the executive committee meetings and sometimes just to be adopted by general consent. But it is a process that involves the pastors as well as the lay leaders.
Could you give us an idea of what some of those recommendations have been as you've worked with associations?
Give me a little more
Like when-
background to your question.
Like when you've worked with those associations and they've revitalized, what are some of the recommendations that they have made, that they
Okay.
have come back with?
When we have come back with it, about 4 generalities that have come back that we have seen in recommendation. First off, they've told us that it's very, very inspirational. We've had a number of the AMS tell us, I wish I'd have knew this 10 years ago. I wish I knew this information when we started. It would have greatly helped me. I'd have led in a different way. So it brings a great deal of inspiration to the AMS, but it also inspires the pastors in seeing how this process goes, how it establishes its purpose and its principles, its priorities, bringing participation in. It inspires them to do the same thing into their churches and seek lead. It's not unusual for us, as we've led through this, for then churches to approach us. Can you help us do the same thing into our church? Secondly, it brings examination. In a non-conflicting manner, we're actually able to go in and help an association to examine exactly what it is that is their strengths and their weaknesses. We want to magnify their strengths and then help to address, to strengthen their weaknesses. So it becomes a very great non-conflicted manner to examine the association. The third that we have in there is it becomes very informative. We gathered the information that comes from the pastors and the key lay leaders. Having this information is valuable. Information is key for transformation. I share with folks that we cannot make the proper transformation without a solid understanding of the right information. And then it becomes implementation, how we can help an association. Once we finish process, we don't leave it. We'll continue to coach that AMS coach in there to implement it so that it becomes transformational. And the transformation we look at is to help the pastors, the churches of the association to become Great Commission, Great Commandment churches. So those are the 4 key things that we have found that becomes the great benefits coming out of the process.
Joe, as you were talking there, one of the things that I keyed in on, and I've seen you I've seen you firsthand with this, is that you were talking about that you do it in a non-conflicting manner. And I've seen you do this, and I know here in Georgia we have the adage that pastors are our heroes, and so I can see this kind of connecting that DOMs are your heroes, and this process is not to be reflecting on them that they weren't doing a good job, rather, but to magnify the strengths and to be forward thinking versus finger pointing. Could you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. We do believe that when the process is over, we don't want anybody to say that Joe or Reset is what did this. We want first and foremost God to get the glory. And secondly, we want the AMS to be seen as the strong leader, the man that led through, brought the association to the point of transformation. It is key that the process and the consultant never be seen as the reason. The reason for the transformation change has to be seen as the ministry of the Holy Spirit based upon the truth of the Word of God and led by the AMS. We do everything we can to make the AMS at the front to use a modern day term, to be the face of the transformational change.
Joe, could you give us a few illustrations of kind of before and after in these churches, in these associations, what sorts of things they may have implemented as a result of this process that brought transformation to the associations?
Okay. One I look at, I see on the screen that Brad Goodell, who is the current AMS for the Union Association. I'll use that association's family. When we began the process with them, that was a very conflictive, combative an association. The previous AMS lasted 6 weeks there. They fired him after 6 weeks. That's how conflictive, combative that association was. They went through the process. The pastors in that association, it was said to me that if this pastor comes, I'll not come. We had to work very clearly getting into the cohorts, pastors that would be willing to sit at the table. At the time, when it was going through, Pastor Brad was the pastor of one of the churches. He was on the leadership team for it, and God just so worked in that. It brought peace, it brought harmony. They had a clear sense of understanding of their purpose. They came out with a clear understanding of their priorities, the principles that was based upon. And today it is a strong, flourishing association. In fact, it came to the point where Pastor Brad, who was the moderator, they ended up calling him as the DOM. Seeing him on the screen, that's one story I can tell. But we have seen in other associations some of the great stories come out. One of the associations that we went through, it was a very floundering association. They had no sense of purpose, no sense of direction. The DOM had been there a number of years, and he had been there over 20 years. And the association, as you know, changed. When he first came, his spiritual gift set was that he is still an administrator. He's very good at calendaring when somebody from NAM, somebody from Lifeway, State Convention would come in, and he had great pastoral care. But in many ways, participation had gone down to very little. The association was financial difficulties, struggling in all of the key areas. Upon discovering their purpose, these principles upon which to build, the priorities of it, has been a tremendous turnaround. And the AMS was sharing with me recently that the association has become very relevant to both the pastor and to the churches and meeting their needs. These are but two of the testimonies that I can give. We've seen God do a great deal in partnership between the pastors, the churches, and the AMS for it to be a transformational impact on it. Brother Larry, did that answer your question?
That helps.
Okay. What other questions can we ask? I want to make sure I answer your question here in the few minutes that we have remaining.
Got about 5 more minutes. Any other questions?
So, well, just a kind of a follow-up. What kind of priorities might you give some examples of that churches took one that they did not previously have?
Okay. In one of the associations, that one of the principles that came about was that they realized that they needed to focus on relationships. This is an association that was down near the coast of South Carolina. They realized prior to going into it that they lacked really strong pastor-to-pastor relationships. So that was a principle. The priority that came out of that was that they have focused on regional cohorts. Geographically, it's a large association, so they have developed 7 geographical cohorts. One of the measurements for the association in the area of participation now has been how many pastors are participating in those cohorts. The last time I talked to the AMS, which was back in the fall of the year, they were running about 80 to 85% of their pastors involved in the relational cohorts. That's how discovering a principle that undergirded the association, we were able to help build a plan that became a priority for that association.
Any other questions? Anything you want to add, Joe?
We're here to help. We'll be glad to help any association in any way that we can. We giving you the contact information. Please call me. We'll follow up. And through Noonday and through Move the Mountain Ministries, we'll be glad to come in and help you in any way that we can help you, from leading you in the process, serving as a consultant or a coach into it. Part of one of the processes we do coach a number of our AMSs, and would be honored to assist, as I say, as a consultant with the reset process, as a coach unto you in any way that we can help.